$45,000. That's a realistic tail coverage bill for a 3-year emergency medicine position. And here's what most physicians don't know. If your contract doesn't specifically address who pays for tail coverage, that bill lands on you. Even if your employer terminates you without cause, this isn't a hypothetical risk. This is one of the most financially consequential provisions in your contract, and it's buried in insurance language most physicians skim past. Let's break down exactly what you need to understand and negotiate. Malpractice insurance comes in two fundamental structures. Occurrence policies cover any incident that happens during your employment period, regardless of when the lawsuit gets filed. If you treat a patient in year 2 and get sued in year 5 after you've left, the occurrence policy still covers you. Claims-made policies work differently. They only cover claims filed while the policy is active. Same scenario. Patient in year 2, lawsuit in year 5, but now you've left the practice. The claims-made policy expired when your employment ended. You have no coverage. Here's the reality of emergency medicine. The vast majority of positions use claims-made policies. They're cheaper for employers up front, which means the coverage gap problem falls on you. Medical malpractice claims often surface years after the incident. The statute of limitations varies by state, but patients frequently have 2 to 3 years to file. Pediatric cases can extend even longer. You could leave a position today and face a lawsuit 3 years from now for a patient you saw last month. Without tail coverage, you're uninsured for that claim. Tail coverage, technically called an extended reporting period endorsement, extends your claims-made policy to cover lawsuits filed after you leave for incidents that occurred during your employment. It closes the gap. The cost is substantial. For a typical 3-year emergency medicine tenure, tail coverage runs $30,000 to $60,000. Some high-risk states or longer tenures push that higher. And this isn't an annual premium spread over time. It's a lump sum due when you leave. The default answer, if your contract is silent, you pay. Some contracts explicitly state the physician is responsible for tail coverage. Others simply don't mention it, which achieves the same result. The tail obligation falls to you unless your contract specifically shifts it to the employer. This matters most in termination scenarios. If you resign voluntarily, an employer can reasonably argue you should bear the cost. But what if they terminate you without cause? What if they choose not to renew your contract? In many employment agreements, you still owe the full tail premium even when the departure wasn't your choice. There's an alternative called nose coverage or prior acts coverage. Instead of extending your old policy backward, your new employer's policy covers your prior work. When you join a new practice, nose coverage makes that policy retroactive. The advantage, it's typically less expensive because the premium gets folded into ongoing policy costs rather than a lump sum payment. The limitation, it only works if you're moving to another position with a willing employer. 4 specific contract provisions protect you from the tail coverage trap. First, employer-paid tail on termination without cause. If your employer ends your contract for reasons unrelated to your performance, they should pay the tail. You didn't choose to leave. The coverage gap shouldn't be your financial burden. Second, employer-paid tail on non-renewal. Many emergency medicine contracts auto-renew annually. If the employer chooses not to renew, that's functionally a termination without cause. Same logic applies. Third, prorated tail provisions. A contract might specify the employer pays a percentage of tail based on tenure. After 1 year, maybe 20%. After 5 years, perhaps full coverage. This rewards loyalty and reduces your financial exposure over time. Fourth, tail coverage triggered by practice sale or group change. If your employer gets acquired or loses the hospital contract, you could find yourself out of a job through no fault of your own. Strong contracts address this scenario explicitly. Here's a number most physicians never see. Your highest acuity emergency department visit carries a malpractice RVU component. Roughly 4% of the total reimbursement, translating to about $6 per high acuity visit flowing toward malpractice costs. This revenue goes to your group or employer. They use it to fund malpractice premiums, but when you leave, the tail obligation may still be yours, even though the malpractice revenue component supported coverage throughout your entire employment. Understanding this strengthens your negotiating position. The group collected malpractice revenue throughout your tenure. Asking them to fund tail coverage isn't unreasonable. It's asking them to use that revenue for its intended purpose. Watch for these danger signs in contract language. Silence on tail coverage is a red flag. If the contract doesn't mention it, assume you're responsible. Physician responsible language, regardless of termination reason, shifts all risk to you. Vague provisions about negotiating tail at time of departure leave you without leverage when you need it most. Short vesting periods for employer-paid tail, like requiring 10 years of service, mean most physicians never actually benefit. Tail coverage can cost $30,000 to $60,000 for a standard emergency medicine tenure. That cost shouldn't be invisible until you're leaving. It should be addressed before you sign. Negotiate employer-paid tail for termination without cause and non-renewal. Push for prorated provisions that reward tenure. Get these terms in writing before day one. Before you sign your next contract, run it through the Emergency Medicine Contract Analyzer. It identifies tail coverage gaps, flags, missing protections, and shows you exactly what's at stake financially before you're committed. Don't discover a $45,000 obligation on your way out the door. Link in the description.